We're living in an era where new lenses are being released almost every month. They can be cine glass, but also photography glass. Now, this is both a blessing and a curse. On one hand, it's nice because it allows us filmmakers to be a bit more experimental. But on the other hand, there's so much to choose from that it gets quite overwhelming. Now, before we get the nerdy stuff, all the numbers out of the way, let's talk about how they actually perform. Like, what images can they produce? For me, it was a very easy choice. I wanted to bring these lenses into the mountains, especially because they're super small and lightweight. Like, this is the 50mm. I mean, it fits in the palm of my hand. So I really wanted to test these out in an environment that I am familiar with, but also know how hard it can be to shoot with heavy stuff. So I took them to the mountains. I took them to Austria during a holiday trip with my father and girlfriend, and we put them to the test, I can tell you that. Now, something that I really like about these lenses are the flares. And then they definitely do remind me of the Leica R lenses because they have these halos, I think they're called, like these balls of light right here. And I don't know, it's just cool. And sometimes even in the right position, there's a little bit of a rainbow effect. And I mean, it's super personal, of course, I know that, but I personally really like these flares. Now, contrast-wise, I think they're quite the same as my Sony G Master lenses. I wouldn't say one is much more contrasty than the other. And I've also shot a lot of clips that were shot on Sony glass and then later on the Simera-C. This, for example, is all shot on the Sony glass. You can definitely see it in the flares. Like, the flares are definitely way less intense. Like, there's just a little bit of a ball here. Yeah, the image contrast-wise looks kind of the same. And of course, you can alter so much in post these days. So yeah. Okay, so let's do a little bit of a flare test. It's better in the dark. So let's get these lights. Got my little torch here, got a monitor so I can see what I'm doing. So you really can clearly see that it produces such insane looking flares. I like it. I like the imperfection of it. Okay, so now let's compare this to the Sony. Way less flaring. I mean, there's flares for sure, but it's way less obvious. It's cleaner. I do definitely like the Simera-C over the Sonys when it comes to flaring. Okay, by now we know that the Simeras offer nice flaring and have a very cool compact design. Now, before we dive into the very nerdy stuff like color matching and sharpness tests, I want to talk about a couple more points. Okay, so the first thing that I do whenever I get a new lens set like this is mod them all to a standardized front diameter. So I have this ring. This is, what is it? A 62 to an 82. The only downside is that you cannot put them in your case anymore. So I just put them in my lens case, the one that I bring to set, which I always prep before the shoot. So I always bring like a Peli case, put the lenses in there that I'm using on that shoot day. And that's how I roll with it. All the lenses feature a 0.8 gear pitch focus ring and aperture ring, which are positioned on the same height. So you don't have to change your focus motors when swapping lenses. I'm a big fan of the 210 degrees focus throw. This is very easy to operate from the barrel. Also, the focus and aperture are super smooth and the 16 blades create a nice rounded bokeh. All right, you guys ready to nerd? Let's do this. 50mm wide open color test. The first thing that catches my eye is that the image overall looks pretty much the same. The only thing that does differ is the amount of vignetting. On the 21, you can clearly see the vignetting. Of course, against the white background, it's a bit more dramatic. While on the 75, you cannot see anything at all. Those are things you have to keep in mind when shooting on these lenses. In this example, you can see that the Sony lens is a bit cooler, but the colors are generally the same. Okay, next up, let's test the sharpness of both lenses. Okay, hi. Okay, so let's compare the 50 Sony G Master 1.2 versus the Simera-C 50 1.5. Okay, so this is the 50 at 1.5. When you look at the Simera image as a whole, it is quite nice. But once you start to zoom in, you definitely see some imperfections and some soft spots, especially in the corners. But it's of course at T1.5. When you look at the Sony, it is tack sharp,
Whether you look in the center or in the corners, everything is sharp. And that's quite impressive for a lens at f1.4 or t1.5. When you look at these two results side by side, you can absolutely see the massive difference it makes.
Okay, so right now recording on the 21, all the way open at t1.5.
The 21mm has a bit of distortion in the corners, but that's nothing new because it's a wide-angle lens in the end. Considering this is shot at t1.5, I do still think it's quite sharp. You will definitely see that the lens becomes way sharper once we stop down the aperture. We're currently at t2.8, and you can definitely see the difference in sharpness, especially at the figure A. Now we're at t5.6, and this is where the lens really becomes a sharp lens and loses a lot of that vintage character that you have once you start shooting wide open. Right here you have a 300% zoom of the 1.5, 2.8 and 5.6.
And then last but not least, let's do 75. Perfectly centered. So 75 at 1.5.
Hopefully you're still with me. I know this is tough, but it's important information when you consider buying this lens set. So the 75 at 1.5 is, as you can expect, relatively soft. At 2.8 you can clearly see that it starts to become sharper, especially in the corners. And last but not least, at 5.6, everything is nice and sharp and very usable for commercial work or product shots that need that amount of detail. Okay, one more side by side for good measure, and then we are done with the nerdy stuff.
Okay, to sum this video up, I have to say that I am extremely excited about these lenses. I rarely am as excited about lenses as I was with my Leica. Oh my god, the freaking cat. Jesus. Altijd, hey. I think these lenses are ideal for single shooters, for people that want a nice set of lenses, super consistent over the entire range, with a nice fast aperture for darker scenes, small and lightweight, but also feature a nice focus ring that you can operate from the barrel on your own without a focus puller. And also for the price point of 4,700 euros, including taxes, it is a no-brainer if you know you can put these lenses away on a couple jobs that you have and earn them back over time. There's one thing to add about vintage glass versus these lenses. I noticed when I was shooting on my own Leica lenses that I was extremely cautious about them because I knew that whenever I would break my 19mm, it would be such a pain to repair it. It takes months, maybe even a year. Or if I needed to replace it, it cost me a ton of money, and it is just very difficult to find these lenses. Not the case with a set like this. Because they're new, if something breaks, you can just purchase the lens again. Of course, it's not ideal, but that peace of mind just creates a different sort of mindset for me. I can use these lenses to the fullest without being afraid that I'd break them. So yeah, that's also something that went on in my mind while I was in the mountains. So yeah, if you'd ask me, should you buy these lenses? I would almost always say yes, because they're such a relatively small investment compared to a camera, for example. They're just as expensive as a Sony FX3. And these lenses you can use for way longer than your Sony camera, because in 2 years' time, there's a newer, better version of that camera out there. So personally, I'd always invest more money into glass that you are actually using than on camera bodies, but that's a different topic. And if you're, for example, using photo glass to shoot your regular day-to-day stuff, then these lenses live perfectly alongside that set because they're different enough to justify using them for different projects, if you know what I mean. Okay, that's it, guys. So thank you so much for watching. Hopefully it was helpful. And also, I would really love to hear what you guys are thinking about these lenses. So let me know in the comments. And of course, definitely sign up for the FMC, check out Prep Supply. And if you have any questions about it, let me know. Want to say bye, Poes? She's ignoring me. Okay, classic cat.